Hello, hello. Welcome to the latest art gripe since the last cartoon thing that I put out, which was putting potential in your partner, I think is what I called it. So sort of a loose sequel to that more infamous video about the Pokemon, which that one I think has like millions of views at this point, whereas this one I think by now probably has clipped 100,000, and that's it. So that's sort of what this video is going to be about in a sense. Because I've also been focusing on doing other stuff because I was so excited to get other things done. Hold on, let me backtrack for a second. COVID happened, right? A lot of shit went wrong. If you don't know, I was working up and making more and more complicated animations about 3 years ago. And at some point I got it into my head that I was going to do a Star Wars animation. And I started shopping around the idea, and I decided this is going to be the one where I have like voice acting, and I get a bunch of more infamous people around, and I managed to get a hold of Mike from Red Letter Media. He did some voices, did the Team 4-Star people did some voices, and did this really long, like 15-minute long audio recording. So needless to say, that animation never got done. It never even got fully primaried, just because so much stuff was going on at the time. Like a lot of family stuff, a lot of economic stuff was happening. This is whenever COVID just started happening as well. So everything was a gigantic mess. And the more that time went on, the more I realized this is actually destroying my channel, because people want to know where I am, what's going on, and I can't spend every single day working on this for hours and hours and accomplishing nothing. So I ended up just tabling the whole thing. And that's probably the biggest failure that I've had in my career, I guess, because I spent so many months just working for nothing. And that's unfortunately just how it works when it comes to doing the sort of work that I do, which is also sort of what this video is going to be about. But in the process of being excited to finally get an animation done and out the door that not many people really cared about too much, comparatively to my old stuff, I decided to go back to like streaming and go back to doing individual drawings and just trying to get back into the rhythm of things, which I sort of have. But also, as I feared, it is sort of an indication that life has passed me by in some ways. So this is going to tie into the Adventure Time stuff. Because Adventure Time is also about growing up and finding your place and stuff like that. It's a nice little cartoon. You should watch it if you haven't. This will, I guess, sort of have spoilers in it. I'll be talking about it in general, so if you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it, but, you know, I'm not gonna synopsize the entire thing for you. Okay, but anyways. Ever since that animation, that Star Wars animation, where everything just kind of went wrong, I have been on sort of a downward spiral in terms of my career, in a sense. I have remained stable in terms of income thanks to the Patreon, but I am at the point absolutely where no one really cares about me anymore in terms of, me being important in any degree. If I ask another person, like another content creator for something, I'll probably get ghosted. I may as well just not exist. You kind of reach that point. It's just the reality of working online. You're either important or you're not important. You're either in vogue or you're not in vogue. I am not in vogue right now, and I have not been for quite some time. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that all the things that I was sort of associated with tapered off. I stopped producing things because of various reasons. Just got very tired, very worn down. And the output that I could create, because I'm, a hand animator that's working on his own, I just never reached the point where I could hire people to create huge quantities of something. Like something that I think of recently is Meat Canyon has become way more popular recently. And I can actually think of a few other people that, have more recent popularity, and they're outputting videos like crazy. And I have seen it before. I've seen it with myself. I knew it was going to happen whenever I, sort of took off, because I'm forward-thinking in some ways. is that eventually that content has to drop off, because you just brutalize yourself to the point that you just can't go any further. And mentally you become so exhausted that you will reach the point where you just stop producing entirely. But I think of him specifically because he's making this great, amazing content. But one of the things that you will see him not complain about, but it's something he has to deal with. And believe me, this is not a criticism towards him. He's being absolutely fantastic. Is just how exhausting it is. And I don't know how much longer he can keep going at the rate that he's going. He's been able to slow down, thankfully, because of the Patreon. And that's the main advantage to a Patreon, is it allows you to not go insane. Which is... The Patreon is the only thing that's kept me alive over the past, 10 years. It's been the only real career that I've ever had, and this is one of the reasons why I don't want to touch it, don't want to do anything to it. Because if anything goes wrong with it, that's it for me. Like, I'm just done. Because I can stream on Twitch, but with about 150 to 200 people showing up for a stream at most, usually, that's not going to be something that I'm going to be able to make a big living off of, because most of making a living online comes down to either being able to game a system by just making millions and millions of views every video, and just being one of the most popular people on the planet. And then just residually getting income, like if you make Tik Tok videos, and you just crank those things out, and they're just nothing. But you have hundreds of them because you're just releasing them daily, which I'm sure that must be incredibly exhausting. Just making $1,000 per 1 million views, which is pathetic. Like, $1,000 sounds like a lot, but needing to get 1 million views consistently just to make $1,000, which is like half of what you need for a monthly income, bare minimum, that's not something that you can really, do at a sustainable rate. Most of online income comes down to people that are financially better off than you are, or are at least more stable in the sense they have a consistent job where they don't have to worry about how much money they're going to be making each month. Like me, it varies wildly. I can make, less than $2,000 a month, since I mentioned $2,000 earlier, or I can make, $3,000 or $4,000 or something, depending on wild, crazy numbers. It just depends. There's no reliability. But if you work at a day-to-day job, then, you get paid an even rate. So it's more or less, it's not acceptable to get paid minimum wage, but you know what that money is going to be. So you'll get people that will donate for that reason as well. And I appreciate anyone, from the person that gives $1 a month and has for the past 5 years or whatever. I love those people because it's there, it's consistent. Or the people that will donate one time to me in their entire lives, and it's $100 or something, some nutty thing like that. I appreciate them too, because that's a lot of money. But it's still always going to come down to someone out of the kindness of their heart, basically, giving you something that you're releasing for free. You can view my animations regardless of whether or not I ask you for money or not. It's just there. And I'm making it because I want to make it. And people have asked me before, if you miraculously became a millionaire somehow or something, would you keep doing what you're doing? And my answer to that has always been, sort of, because I still want to keep making the things that I'm making. But at the same time, I would not be killing myself to try to produce things that I know are going to be popular. I did the Pokemon cartoon thing, mainly because I knew that people would actually want to watch it, instead of something like a Dead by Daylight cartoon, which is the thing I released before it, which no one really gave a damn about. And right now I'm having Greg work on a Dead by Daylight video, which I know no one's really going to care about, and if anyone does, it'll probably be critical of me, so it'll just result in negative publicity, I imagine. But I'm also at the same time working on privately a Hunter x Hunter video, which is going to be more in the format of my old anime videos, because I know that will probably be more popular. I don't really want to, but I know that that's probably the best bet for me. So whenever you're doing this sort of stuff online, you have to just weigh all these various things. It's just a pain in the ass. Which is part of the reason why I've kind of enjoyed Adventure Time lately, is just because of the simplicity of it and the focus on being young. Because whenever you're an adult, you have to constantly worry about where your income is going to come from, not only in the moment, but in the future. And for me, I don't know what future I necessarily have, because it definitely does feel like time has passed me by in a lot of ways. And that's just the nature of entertainment. You know, even for like standard entertainers, you have to try to hit your stride, get really well known for a very small stretch of time, make as much money as you possibly can in that frame of time, and then get out. Because you will fade off, people will stop caring about you either way. This is how things go. And especially now that online entertainment has become more about small bite-sized bits of entertainment. The kind of stuff that I make, that I like to make, these long-form, like really analytical things, they're just not really important anymore. No one really cares about them. It's like the video that you're watching right now, this Arkwright. A lot of people are going to be listening to it for the sake of it being a podcast, but not many people are really like that these days. They want something that they can experience while they're sitting on the commode for, about 30 seconds and then they're done. And I just don't make that kind of content. I really don't want to make that kind of content, because I guess I'm just an old fogey. I don't really know. But anyways, in regards to Adventure Time, ignoring the furry bait going on here, I was just looking for, like, what character can I draw from this that, will be my audience? Bronwyn. Because I always did like drawing her, and she's kind of hard to draw. All the Adventure Time characters are kind of hard to draw, because you can tell that Pendleton Ward, the creator, his art style stemmed from probably like drawing on very small things, like napkins and bars and stuff like that. That's just a guess, I don't actually know. Because all of his designs are these little tiny things that have very small features, like dots for eyes and noodle arms, and things like that don't really look good at larger resolutions when you're working on a larger model. They look much better when you're drawing very, very tiny people. And that's like sort of a coping stroke method, I guess you would call it, so that you can try to create as much depth of motion and movement with as small of a motion as possible, if that makes any sense. So that's my guess. But the art style doesn't really translate particularly well whenever you're trying to blow it up into something that looks like halfway realistic, or especially if you're trying to go for pure realism. In a way, it's almost easier to go for pure realism if you're like trying to translate, like, say, Princess Bubblegum into something that looks realistic, because then you can just draw any pretty-looking lady and just give her pink hair, and for the most part, you're done. But if you're actually trying to translate the actual, like, model into something that looks more detailed, then it becomes really, really difficult. And a good example of that will be Bronwyn's eyes later on. Like her actual model, she has eyes and pupils, but it's just a perfectly round black, oval that has another white oval inside of it. And for the cartoon, it works fine, but whenever you're trying to blow it up into a bigger model, it just doesn't really work particularly well. So eventually, I decide, this looks terrible, I'm going to fix it. So I end up redrawing her eye kind of later on in the process. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say in regards to the art style of Adventure Time. Something I wanted to talk about in regards to Adventure Time itself is I found it really interesting how all the characters, even if they're portrayed as being good, are all a little bit shitty in their own way. Like, for example, I hate BMO. Like, I cannot stand BMO. BMO is their little... I know a lot of people, BMO, he's so pure! Yeah, I understand, I hate BMO. The idea with BMO is that he's this little helper robot friend who is basically just like a cube that has like a calculator lens that has a face on it. And his lore is that he was built to be like a companion to little kids that would help them to grow. But BMO's actual characterization is he's effectively a child. He's programmed to act just like a kid. So as a result, he lives through his imagination, or her imagination. It's like a gender fluid thing. Football, his alternate identity in the mirror, I think, is the female, more identifying thing, and usually characters refer to BMO as he, but sometimes she. It kind of just depends on the character, I guess, and it's not really important. I mean, it's a little robot dude, either way. But the consistent problem with BMO, for example, is that BMO is incredibly selfish, just like kids, and will actively, destroy other people's stuff and go out of their way to make their lives worse just because BMO thinks it's funny or because BMO wants something. Like BMO stealing all of Finn's baby teeth to sell because BMO wanted to live out the fantasy of being a door-to-door salesman, for example. Did not ask when prompted, why did you do that? Didn't care, doesn't give a shit. And, that's BMO. I just don't like BMO for that reason, because BMO's kind of a little shithead, because that's what kids are. They're just little shitheads. They only care about themselves and their own various impulses, and whenever they're not allowed to live out their impulses, they get angry about it, because that's the thing that makes them feel powerless. And that's something I feel like every human in different degrees has to go through whenever they're growing up. Some never go through that. Because I've known plenty of people that never grew out of that stage. Where, as a kid, you want something, give me that. Or you, push someone down to steal something from them because you want it. And that child is just never punished. And so as they get older, that hardware, or the software with them never changes. They know that they can get away with things. So, irrespective of how old they get, their methodology to approaching situations doesn't really change. The same thing can go on with, let's say, a stereotypical pretty girl who just gets everything that she wants. She's used to going from one relationship to another because she knows that men will bend over backwards to make her happy because they want her. It's almost like a commodity, I guess. And whenever she doesn't get what she wants, she knows that she can just get rid of that guy and move on to the next one, because there's always going to be plenty to go through that always want her in various ways. And so as a result, they never learn to really respect anything around them. They don't really learn to get along with anyone around them. Their desires matter way more than everyone else's. So you can end up with someone that's incredibly narcissistic, and whenever they hurt someone that they actually care about, it will instead, they'll try to redirect it as being the other person's fault somehow. It's never their fault. And, that's just a stereotype, and it's just very common, because that is just how humans are. If there is no correction mechanism, or if there is at least a reinforcement of their behavior, then that's the behavior that's going to stick. And if a child is taught a certain language, I don't mean a literal language, but a method of communication and interpreting the world around them, that is the language that they will speak for the rest of their lives. Because adults are effectively kids that are dealing with the baggage of being children for the rest of their lives. For me, in my case, all my shit kind of revolves around the fear of not being wanted, being rejected, being abandoned, that sort of stuff, because that's what I went through when I was a kid. For other people, it's completely different. Some people don't really have a problem with the fear of rejection. They'll have problems with all sorts of different other things. And I never really had much of an issue with narcissism or anything. It's more the reverse, where I put no value in myself because I was always told by my father growing up that I had no value, that I was, a burden on them, that I was stupid and pointless, and that I would never amount to anything, and so forth and so on, because that's how he was raised. So he was speaking the language that was imparted upon him by his father to me, and that in turn is something that I ultimately rejected, but still had a colossal impact on me as a result. That is just how growing up is. And I've had to deal, especially a lot lately, with dealing with other people that speak their own language because of the abuse that they went through whenever they were younger, and that has extremely negatively impacted my relationship with them because they don't know how to process things. And I'm going to go into detail, I guess, but they can't process having any sort of friendship with anyone else without it going through that filter. And if you infringe upon the way that they view the world, they just shut down, and they can't deal with it anymore. So you just stop being friends as a result. It's sort of like that. It's something that I understand, but I think that's one of the reasons why I value so much people having empathy, and people being able to externalize and view themselves from a distance. I think that's one of the most important characteristics in a person, is being able to look at yourself and see yourself for your own faults and admit that you are at fault. I'm not always good at this because no one is. No one's perfect. But I think the smartest thing that a person can say is something like, I don't know. To present, especially these days, is not valued quite as much. Everyone needs to have a perfect opinion of something all the time. And when you approach someone with some political idea or something, they have to, at that moment, know exactly what the answer is and have a perfect knowledge of all its components, which is not how the world works. Even the most complicated political thing that's going on right now does have nuance to it, regardless of whether someone is comically evil or not. There's always going to be something more to it. And if you say, I don't know yet, give me time to have a proper perspective on it, let me research it, people will react very negatively to that because, to them it's black and white. But I've always found being able to leverage the good and bad of something to be incredibly important. Even in supporting friends in the past, when they've had some sort of trouble, like someone attacking them or something, I've always told them, well, I'm going to look at it from both perspectives. Because the thing that I find that people always value about me is my honesty and my earnestness. My ability to approach things in such a way that I look at it from even the perspective of someone that I don't like. Which I find to be incredibly important. And actually, in Adventure Time, that's something that happens in the last episode, in a sense. There's a big, good versus evil sort of battle. And Finn, the human, the main character, is trying to get everyone to stop fighting and, because in the past, it opens with him just fighting evil. He just runs around, yeah, I'm gonna kill the bad guys, and he does. Because at the beginning of the series, it is a very, very simplistic depiction of good versus evil. Because there are things that just exist to be bad, and they're like, I'm evil, I'm gonna get you, defeat me because I'm evil. It's like a video game. And that doesn't really change too much throughout the series. There are things that are still plenty evil. But at the very end of the series, yeah, there is a definitive example of that. I'm trying not to spoil anything. Where the sort of penultimate sort of villain that they encounter is someone who is incredibly unreasonable, but eventually does, after going through a sequence of events, kind of approach things from the perspective of someone that is not himself. Empathy is the key to everything. Being able to look at someone else's perspective. Here, by the way, the thing I mentioned with the eye, not looking right at all. Yeah, this is where I decide, I had enough of this, I'm fixing this shit. But anyways, I was actually talking I was discussing this with the missus the other day. This idea of, in programs usually, because there was an example like a kid that had a bully, and then eventually they become friends. In real life, it doesn't really work that way. In cartoons, growing up, I don't know what cartoons are like now. Like ones aimed at older, or younger kids, I should say. But whenever I was growing up, there was definitely bullies are hurting too. They're just upset because they have bad conditions at home, or, something like that. And if you just talk to them, and reason with them, and, like, hug them and tell them that they're valid and all this, just 90s bullshit, then they'll come around and then they'll just become friends and they'll like you, and they'll turn into a normal boy. That is not true. What actually happens is, like, typically, like, this is not the same for everyone, but it's just as I've gotten older, I see this constantly. That someone who grows up as a bully will grow up to be like a city council member or something. Because they're just wired that way. It's their nature. Like, they're born... Like, if they have abusive parents, they probably also have whatever the abusive thing is that's, partially creating that inside of them. Both from nature and from nurture. I'm not saying that narcissism is like something you're going to absolutely be born with or anything like that. But there's components to all these things, and they're extremely complicated and so on. But if a kid is raised in a very negative environment like that, and he's born with a predisposition to be an asshole, then he's probably going to stay an asshole, unfortunately. No amount of warm hugs and telling people that they're valid and trying to share the dodgeball with someone on the playground is going to fix someone like that. They're just going to keep being an asshole. So that kid that grows up from being a bully into being a council member is going to quote-unquote forgive themselves for being a huge asshole, and then go about their day being a different form of an asshole that is more nuanced and doesn't look quite as bad optically from a distance. They learn to hide that both from other people and from themselves. So the person that hurts you and then never, approaches you and apologizes in any way, exhibits no remorse whatsoever, and then later on you learn, quote-unquote, forgave themselves and, moved on from what they used to be, they didn't change. They're doing the exact same thing that they always have. They're just processing it the best that they possibly can, without actually confronting their own nature. They're trying to change without changing. And that is a big problem in regards to being an adult. Is being able to not only evaluate what you are, but also trying to consciously change it in a way that is uncomfortable for you. Not even just because you have to, but because it is a decision that you make because you have a core identity of what is good and what is, wrong. Yeah. In Adventure Time, there are a lot of characters that are like that, where they are portrayed as being good, but there's something about them that is really shitty. Like, take Princess Bubblegum, for example. She is, portrayed as being like a warm, sweet, kind person, and she is, but at the same time, she is also like a despot. She rules with an iron fist. She, creates candy people that aren't, she intentionally creates them to be stupid. Because they're more malleable, or, more pliable. They're not something that really challenges her in a way that, she can't be challenged by someone that is her equal because she can't fix them. She can't control it. She doesn't know how to deal with it. So, in making her cute little subjects, she always makes them in such a way that there are things that need her, that require her. They're pets, they're toys. They're things that she knows will always be innocuous and not something that will make her feel uncomfortable. So all that sweetness is not necessarily a lie, but it certainly masks the reality of what she actually is. So she's not bad, but she's not really good. And a lot of people are like that too. I'd say that most adults find a place of comfort in their lives, and that's where they want to sit. And I'm the same way. This is one of my flaws, is I learned early on in my childhood that like one of the biggest factors in my life is the idea of like I'm inflicted with what was it called? Learned helplessness. I learned very early on that I had no power over my situation. Bad things were going to happen to me. I couldn't control them. I wasn't going to get any help. No one cared about me. So as a result, the only thing that I could do was just try to create a stable living condition around me that was filtered and controlled in such a way that nothing could hurt me. And I find that a lot of adults are like this too. They don't want to be hurt by things, so they will filter the things that could potentially hurt them out of their lives completely. And I do that same thing. And my way of doing that is to just try to have as simple of a life as possible. So I learned to not have ambitions because I also learned from, my upbringing, my parents, that ambition is never rewarded. And whenever someone can victimize you, they will. Like one of my earliest memories in school is like being in first grade, and here we have final drawing. And I didn't learn it till later, but one of my books went missing, so the teacher punished me by not allowing me to go to recess for like 2 weeks. It was a very long time for me as a little kid. And eventually a little girl admitted that she had stolen my book because she had lost hers. She never apologized to me. The teachers certainly never apologized for punishing me for nothing. They just switched us out. Said, okay, you get punished instead. They didn't care. So I learned, it's one of those very early formative experiences of, I will be exploited, and whenever it happens, no one's going to believe me, no one's going to care. So the only thing I can do is shell myself and just try to live a stable life that doesn't involve having to confront other people. Because if I get out of my shell, if I lower my walls, I will be hurt. And even that has happened very recently, like in the past, 3-4 years. I've had situations where I had to expose myself to potential danger, and as my instincts unfortunately were right, and that's exactly what happened. I was very brutally hurt for really doing nothing other than trying to expand the range of what I had in my life, and trying to, make other people happy. And trying to move past that and trying to have a more fulfilling life and grow as a person can be extremely difficult whenever the thing that is core to your being that you know is a flaw and is not true is something that consistently gets reinforced. And in regards to Adventure Time, that same sort of thing kind of keeps happening, except it's delivered in a much more compact way that is, more reasonable for kids. There's a lot of things, like the Egress episode of Adventure Time is a great example of this, where Finn goes into a dungeon and he learns that the only way that he can progress forward and get out of the dungeon is to close his eyes. So he has to feel a way around in the dark, and he gets transported back in time, in a sense, each time that he opens his eyes. So he'll go for months just walking around with his eyes closed at all times, being completely blindfolded. And other people always end up opening his eyes for him because they think they're being cute, which is, another Adventure Time thing. And it isn't until he manages to get back to that starting point, close his eyes, move forward without any direction, and loop all the way back to the exact dungeon, the Egress dungeon, go back inside, and then retouch the wall from the other side again, that he's able to open his eyes and get out. And there are multiple ways of interpreting that. And that's what I like about those little moments in Adventure Time, is you can find your own meaning of that, but it's clearly trying to deliver a message about, pre-planning and trying to control your environment and all these other things. So, In regards to this video, what I was talking about earlier about my career and so forth and so on, I don't know what's going to happen. The only thing I can do is just keep trying to live a better life and trying to make sure that other people have a good time in the process. I really don't want to make content that serves to just help to keep you guys in your shell. I want to help you grow, but it's kind of hard. What frustrates me is just making a video that doesn't really get any views, because I know that it's reaching some people, but it could reach a lot more. So just trying to find a method of... Because you can tell, like, my strength is not necessarily art, it's this. It's talking to you. Like, I would probably be better suited for, like, a podcast or something. If I had had a different upbringing, I probably would have been a scientist or something, but I didn't really have that opportunity, so here I am. So I'm basically just trying to help future generations in any way that I can, and struggling to find a method to reach a newer generation of people that could learn a few things from me. Not that I'm like some giant vessel of everlasting wisdom or anything, but, just I like the idea of helping people. And I can't do that if I can't reach people. And unfortunately, if the only way that I can really reach people is by making stupid content of the nasty professor man committing bestiality, or whatever, with the video game animals, then it's limiting. So that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately. Is just trying to be more successful, both financially, but more importantly, be more successful in terms of what I'm going to leave behind. Because those are adult thoughts. Adult thoughts. Okay. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this particular video. Hope you enjoyed the drawing. You can probably find me streaming over on Twitch. I have more animation ideas lined up that will hopefully not take quite as long. This one took like 3 months to get done. Drove me insane. Have more... I'm writing on a video right now, and I still have that same one in the pipeline, although Dead by Daylight keeps changing its meta, so I keep having to rewrite portions of it, which is getting on my nerves. Anyways, see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of your support. Believe me. Alright, bye-bye.